Due to existing guidance from Los Angeles County as a worship space indoors, we do need to keep our masks on throughout the ceremony. You're going to see your children, some of your children take their masks off as they lead. You'll see some of our prayer leaders take their masks off as they lead. You'll also see them go back on as soon as they're done leading. That's just done for the sake of everybody being able to hear, but we're all doing the same thing. So thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for helping us out, and thank you for being here for this very meaningful ceremony this morning. No, of course.
רשרוש של המים ברק השמיים תפילת האדם החול והים רשרוש של המים ברק השמיים תפילת האדם. O Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
We'd like to thank all of you for joining our Yom HaShoah memorial ceremony this morning. It's not my mic. I'm still learning how to use a microphone. I apologize. But luckily we've got good trainers. It's fitting in a way that we observe Yom HaShoah just on the heels of Pesach. For as the first day's Torah reading of Pesach recounts, the very, very last thing our ancestors did before they left Egypt was they prepared to commemorate their journey. They prepared to think about how they were going to memorialize all that happened to them in Egypt, how they went from affliction to freedom, how they went from servitude to the promised land, and also how they were going to commemorate those who never made it to the other side of the Sea of Reeds, those who never made it all the way into the land of Israel with them. They figured out how they were going to remember Lizkor, the very first command we receive as a people. Today we do the same thing. Our journey continues, and yet we know it continues without. It continues without 6 million souls and their children, all of whom should be with us today, all of whom should be getting ready to celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut, all of whom should be getting ready to celebrate Chag HaShavuot, all of whom should be getting ready for graduations and parties, all of whom should be able to enjoy all the blessings that we enjoy on this hilltop. But they're not here. And so we remember them. You're going to see a few things this morning. You're going to see offerings from our Y School students. You're going to hear from a survivor of the Shoah, a couple of ground rules for our service this morning. It is a memorial service, so we do ask you a lot of us have. If you're here in person with us, a lot of you have these wonderful devices that keep us connected with the world. We're going to ask you to please set them to silent or turn them off for the duration of our service this morning. Also, we're going to ask you to keep the photos at bay. We know that some of you who have children who are participating, don't worry, we're getting video feed of them, very high quality video feed, so you can just sit back and be in the moment. For those of you joining us from home, we're so grateful that you took time out of your day to commemorate this tragic event in our people's history together with us. We are going to continue with an offering from one of our students, and so I invite Iman up to share a poem with us before we proceed.
The Butterfly by Pavel Friedman, age 12, April 6, 1942. The last, the very last. So richly, brightly, dazzlingly yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone. Such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. For 7 weeks I have lived in here, penned up inside this ghetto. But I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here, in the ghetto.
Continue with our memorial prayer. Thank you, Iman. We'll invite you all to rise. A prayer of memory. שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. עם קירושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים חללי השואה שהלכו לעולמם. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משקפם ונאמר אמן.
Please join me in the English, which you'll find on our screen. God of abundant mercy, God Most High.
6 million who perished in the Shoah.
The gift of peace
In your embrace, together with the holy and pure,
whose
whose light shines with the radiance of heaven.
Compassionate God, hold them close to you forever, so that their souls may be bound in your love eternal. May they find a home with you. May they rest in peace. And together we say, Amen.
You may be seated. a special song of memory. If you know it, please sing with us.
In the rising of the sun, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember.
In the blueness of the sky, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember. When we're weary and need strength, we remember. When we're lost and sick at heart, we remember. When we've joys we yearn to share,
We remember. We remember.
so
long as we live, they too shall live. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. As we remember.
we remember.
We remember.
We remember.
We remember. Invite you to rise for Kaddish Tom, Mourner's Kaddish. Even in this moment of pain and sadness and loss, we give thanks to God for the gift of life itself. Please join with me. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chaye chon u'vyomei chon, u'v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudashah barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min Shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace for us here on earth, for us and for all Israel and for all humanity. And let us say Amen. Please be seated. This morning I got up early and I watched the ceremony from Auschwitz as part of March of the Living. And some of you, I bet in a few years, might go on that tour, on that trip. How many of you in the room have been on a March of the Living journey? Some of the parents maybe or teachers. I know some of you joining from home have participated. In fact, we were supposed to have an adult March of the Living trip that was canceled because of the pandemic, so we'll have to find a time in the future to go again. But one of the speakers today shared something very beautiful that I want to share with you before we begin our candlelighting ceremony. Rabbi Lau, who is second generation survivor. His father is a survivor. Rabbi Lau shared a text from the book of Exodus that talks about Amalek. And in our Jewish tradition, Amalek comes to symbolize pure evil, the worst of humanity. There are so many good people in the world, but there are also, as we know, some wicked people in the world. And in our Torah, Amalek is one of those, but he comes to symbolize all of the evil incarnate in humanity, because he took advantage of the vulnerable. He took advantage of the stragglers, the ones who couldn't keep up with the rest of the group as we were leaving Egypt. And then there's a commandment in the Torah that we are supposed to eradicate Amalek's memory, but it also says that we will be at war with Amalek midor dor, from generation to generation, which could be understood as suggesting that we will be at war with evil forever and ever. But Rabbi Lau had a beautiful teaching that I want to share with you from this morning. He said another way to think of midor dor is that is the hint to us in the Torah about how we can be victorious against evil, because we know there will always be wickedness in the world. But if we can find a way to transmit our values of Torah, midor dor, then we will have vanquished Amalek. And when I look out at you, 5th and 6th graders, and when I think of our community, those of you who are joining us from home, I am inspired because I know that in the face of so many challenges, some of them more dramatic than others, but in the face of so many challenges in the world, we know that our values can help us, midor dor, to face those challenges, to overcome those challenges without ever giving up hope. Our candlelighters today, we have 7 candles. 6 symbolize the 6 million lives from Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people that were lost. And the 7th is our candle of hope. Our first candle will be lit by Isaiah Gordon.
I was the head of an orphanage in Warsaw and an emulated and respected children's author. One day, the Nazis came and took us to Treblinka. When offered my freedom, I told them I could not leave my children, in memory of Janusz Korczak and 1 million Jews.
Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp, which has turned my life into one long night. 7 times cursed and 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget the faces of the children whose bodies I saw turned wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consume my faith forever. Never shall I forget that nocturnal silence which deprived me, for all eternity, of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to dust. Never shall I forget these things, even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself, in memory of Elie Wiesel and in memory of 1 million Jews.
Dear Kitty, I see the world gradually being turned into wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder. I can feel the suffering of millions, and yet, if I look into the heavens, I think that it will all come out right one of these days, that this cruelty will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again.
The
following lines are from the last song I wrote after I was parachuted into a partisan camp in Yugoslavia. Ashrei Hagafur Shnisaf Veitzit Leavot. Blessed is the match consumed in the kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns the secrets, fastness of the heart. Blessed is the heart with strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in the kindling flame, in honor of Hannah Senesh and 1 million Jews.
I am lighting this candle in a loving memory of my great-grandmother Sophie Zudman Hamburger. Her courage, great sense of humor, and tenacious attitude towards survival made me so proud to have known her. She was definitely my hero and will always be. She was such a strong and resilient person that once after she was nearly killed by a bus in a crosswalk, she joked that if Hitler didn't kill her, a bus didn't have a chance. She was also a friend of our WISE community as she would share her stories with us here at school. 9 years ago, my great-grandma Sophie passed away, a proud mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, a hero and a role model for all generations. In memory of Sophie Hamburger and 1 million Jews.
We light this candle in honor of Miss Trudy Strobel and all the survivors of the Holocaust. We are inspired by your personal story, courage, and the commitment to tell in order for us not to forget. In honor of Miss Trudy Strobel and all other brave Holocaust survivors, and in memory of 1 million Jews.
We light this 7th candle as a reminder of our hope that one day we may live in a world free from prejudice and hatred, free from racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and every other ism that prevents us from sitting together in the bonds of friendship. May this be a blessing we bestow upon this world, upon our brothers and sisters in Ukraine who are in the midst of a war, a blessing of shalom.
The candle we lit was one for hope. And we know from the writings of many survivors that even in the midst of the most perilous circumstances our people has ever known, the flame of hope subsisted. The flame of hope brought us to where we are today. The flame of hope lives in us still, that no matter what circumstances we may face, no matter what happens to our people, wherever they may be, that we can choose to face those circumstances with dignity, with our Jewish values and our Jewish learning in mind. And so we invite you now to join us in a song of hope, the song of the birthplace of our people, Hatikva. Please rise.
Kol od balevav venima nefesh Yehudi
Please be seated. So I mentioned just a bit ago the March of the Living, and the journey of the March of the Living is reflected in the Jewish calendar, these days that we find ourselves in right now, from Yom HaShoah, whose date was chosen to coincide with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And then next week, we will commemorate Yom HaZikaron and then Yom HaAtzmaut. Obviously, Yom HaAtzmaut is connected to the birth of the modern state of Israel in 1948. Yom HaZikaron was chosen to be the Memorial Day that happens right before. And in the United States, we have our own Memorial Day that comes in May, and we celebrate our independence in July. But the juxtaposition in Israel of one right after the other is so powerful. For many years, Mrs. Clement and Rabbi Noble and I also had the chance to go with Mrs. Kleinman and other members of the WISE community over the years. We had the chance to bring our sixth graders to Israel for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. And our plan is to do so again next year. Mrs. Clement is working on that with Mrs. Weiser. So I'm sorry for this year's sixth graders that you didn't get the chance to do that, but I hope our fifth graders in the room might be able to go with us next year to Israel. And it's a very powerful moment to see that transition from Yom HaZikaron to Yom HaAtzmaut, which we will commemorate and celebrate next week. But Yom HaShoah, in many ways, is what begins to frame that experience. And I know you sixth graders especially, as you've been studying history this year as part of your sixth grade curriculum, you've learned a lot about that story, and you'll continue to learn more, and you'll go deeper and deeper as you age. But the connection between the events that led up to the Holocaust and the Holocaust itself and the birth of the state of Israel are very, very powerful. One of the things that we are very blessed to be able to do still is hear testimony from people who are firsthand witnesses of some of the horrors of the Holocaust. And with the passage of time, and this is the nature of the world, with the passage of time, that will no longer be possible in the decades to come. And you, in fact, fifth and sixth graders, you are amongst the very last people who will have the opportunity to hear these stories. We're very, very fortunate today to be able to hear the story of one survivor, Trudy Strobel. And I feel very lucky to be able to introduce Trudy because she's part of a program that my daughter, Nomi Zweibeck, who is a graduate of WISE School, she's now a 12th grader, and she wishes she could be here today to help introduce this, but she has school and other obligations as well. But she's part of a program at the Holocaust Museum Los Angeles, where teens spend time with survivors and get to know them and learn their stories. And I feel like I know Trudy very well because through Nomi, I've gotten a chance to hear Trudy's voice almost every Friday, because throughout the pandemic, they would have a Zoom call together. Trudy and other survivors in the same Zoom room with my Nomi and some of her peers. And sometimes I'd come over and give a wave. And many of those Zoom calls were during the part of the pandemic when we were at home in quarantine. You guys all remember that. That was a pretty tough time for us. But boy, it was inspiring to hear some of the stories of the survivors who reminded us that there are ways that you could be stuck inside, indoors with your family that are far, far worse than anything that we were experiencing. So it's a great honor for me to be able to welcome Trudy. I'm going to invite you to come up to our bima. And along with her is Rachel Podbear, who is part of the education team at the Holocaust Museum, Los Angeles. We can all stand in honor of Trudy. You can have a seat right here. And Nomi sends her love.
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to say a few words about Trudy, and then she's going to tell her story with Rachel. You can all be seated again. Everyone stood in your honor because we're so glad that you're here. Trudy is originally from the Ukraine, And she was born in 1938. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, many of the residents of her town were actually deported to Siberia. But Trudy and her mother went to the Lodz ghetto in Poland. We're going to hear more about that story. You can sit, Trudy, please. Have a seat, and Rachel as well. But we're just so grateful that you're here with us to help us to learn and for us to get a chance to spend time with you and get to know you. We feel very lucky. We've distributed already to our 5th and 6th graders an article that was written about Trudy. And those of you joining online, we'll try to put it in the chat so that you can have access to that, or you can just Google Trudy Strobel. And Rachel, thank you so much for everything you do for our community and for being part of the education team at Holocaust Museum Los Angeles. I don't want to take any more of your time, but on behalf of our entire community, our school and our temple, we're grateful to you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I can sit.
Yes,
Oh, okay, okay.
is going to be so as comfortable as you want.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Thank you so.
Thank you, Trudy, for being here. Thank you to the Wise School and community for having us here. It's an honor here to be here with all of you on Yom HaShoah. And I am very honored to call Trudy a friend and to have her here with you to share her story with all of you today. Trudy, if you want to begin.
Look, I look at all these beautiful faces. I'm so honored to be with you this morning. When I'll just go into my life right now. My parents expected a child, and they were hoping I'd be a little girl. And that in 1937, the Bolsheviks took my father away, and they transported him to Siberia, and that's where they murdered him. And that was in November 37, and I was born in March of 38. And I was this little girl, and it was very difficult after they took my father away. Life became difficult for my mother because she then had to, this was a kolkhoz. A kolkhoz is like a community of farming. And she had to milk 10 cows every morning and every night and clean the stalls. And she had me at home. So life went on like this till, let's see, in 1942, the Nazis come in, and they took my mother and me out and transported us on a train to go somewhere, but I don't think my mother even knew where we were going. And I still remember, dear students, as we were boarding that cattle car, these were all cattle cars, we were herded into this cattle car. And the Nazis with their butt rifles, with their butts, not butt rifle, their rifle butts, they pushed us, and I still remember looking down at the German Shepherd, mouth wide open, very scary for a little girl, and shiny boots. And that vision has never left me. I am now 84 years old. So, this cattle car, as we were pushed in, it smelled very bad. They did have, for convenience, it's okay, they did have a pail in the corner but we were pushed in, one touching each other. There was no room anywhere. So there was nothing to be able to go and alleviate anything. And we were in there for over 2 days. No water, no food. And accidents happened, bodily things happened. We were all fearful. The stench is not, you have to sort of think about it, how terrible that was. So we arrive, and again, the Nazis pushed us as we went off. They had planks to go into these cattle wagons, and this is how we came out. And then they told us to which barrack to go, which number. And so Mama and I was always just stuck with Mama. And the reason that I wasn't taken away from my mother is my mother was a very talented, gifted seamstress. And she helped some of the soldiers repair a rip in their uniform. And I think this is why I am here, that they let me be with my mama. And so we come out, they tell us to which barrack to go. So the beds that they were 2 level beds that made wooden beds, and they had wooden planks, and on top of it was a mattress, and at one time that mattress was filled with straw. But when we came, it had been used now, I don't know how long, but the straw became like mush, and it smelled bad, it was dirty, towels dirty. We would get a slice of bread and a bowl of soup, which was mainly water, like a watery soup with a slice of bread. That was our meal for the day. And then, I'm sorry, sometimes, when you talk about this, you get lost and you're right there. You're right there, And so, excuse me. I have some notes, but I seldom use them, but I now come. You see, all of this got started with the pogrom. And a pogrom is a devastation, an organized massacre of helpless people, such a massacre of helpless Jews. And that is then what I lived through. So we arrived in Lodz. That was our destination. And the same, I already told you we arrived and we were in pain, but we moved around all the time. But I do remember this particular town called Lodz. And again, barracks and the same kind of procedure. So one day, a soldier, an American soldier, comes to our barrack. And he says, "The war is over, you're free." Can you imagine? The war is over, you're free. We're stunned. And he said to go down that walkway, and there is a truck there, and we should go, and the truck will take us to safety. So Mama and I, of course, this is what happened. She says, "Trudele, come, we're going to America." You see, at one time, my parents in Ukraine, Russia, there was a small opening when she was younger, and my father and Mama and Dad, they thought they would immigrate to America, but that opening closed before they could make it, because as to where they lived, by the time they couldn't make it. So that's why her happiness was, Trudele, come, we're going to America. And it took a long time. We were transported to a small town called Ammershausen in Germany, and it was in Bavaria, a small village. And it was a very anti-Semitic village. Actually, Bavaria was a very conservative, anti-Semitic area. That's where Hitler came from. He came from this area. And I then started school. At this time now, I started school when I was 8, and this was in Germany, and we were there for 5 years before we ever could come to America. It took that long at that time, and probably now too. I don't know how immigration works. And Mama sewed, as I told you. She was very talented and embroidered, and she taught me how to embroider and sew. I would help her. She didn't even have pinking shears for the seams, so I had to secure all the seams on the inside, whatever she sewed, with buttonhole stitch. I'm a very good buttonhole stitcher, and you can actually embroider many things with a buttonhole stitch, so it was all that led me to become an embroiderer today. I do very vast, big canvas pieces. And so we were there 5 years, and as I went to school, in the back I would hear "Dreckiger Jude," dirty Jew. Now the war is over, don't you see? But it just stuck in, and these were young people my age. So that's what they heard at home. And when we start in our lives to think someone else is less than we are, than I am, this is when hatred starts. And we must never think that someone else is less than we are, because when we get away from this kind of thinking, then we'll have peace in the world. We'll really get along. We won't love each other, all of us, but we can get along and we can talk and not have hatred, keep us in this thinking order, Yeah, so here we are in Ammershausen 5 years. And Mama, with her talent, she used to get around to different other little villages and sewed for people. Luckily, because you see, the government gave us a small stipend and food stamps, but it's never enough. That's why today, when you hear, oh yes, these people get food stamps, this, do you know that's never enough? You have to continuously then try to get to earn a little bit somewhere else in order to even eat and to exist. And so So we are now in, what did I say, in Emmershausen, right, in Emmershausen, for 5 years. And we finally, you see, in the meantime, Mama tried for us to get to America. And then in meantime, we had the okay that we can go to Bremerhaven. Bremerhaven is a sea town. It's right by the ocean, Bremerhaven. And there we boarded a ship. Oh yeah, before we boarded the ship, now I have since then never been sick, but luckily. But at that time I developed tonsillectomy, and it took 3 weeks for me to get well enough, because no one could get on that ship unless you had a, unless you were okay. You know, you had to be gesund, you had to be healthy. Thank you, thank you. And so now we're on General Hahn, which was an army ship, and was not that big of a ship, and it took 6 days to cross the ocean to get to New York, and the weather was. The ocean was very nervous. The waves went up and down, and a lot of people get sick. A lot of good food, you see. I'm always talking about food because we were always hungry, and the food was delicious. But when you're going down and up on this ocean, many people couldn't even eat very much. So now we arrive in New York, and there we boarded a train, and that took us to Chicago. And in Chicago is where Mama and I started our life in America. And she then got work in a factory, a sewing factory. They made men's suits. I think that factory still exists. And so she got that. And I had to learn English, so I went to school. And it was difficult. Mama did piecework, but do you know, it just wasn't quite enough. We had to pay rent. There was no additional help from the state in America. At that time, there was no help for newcomers. And so it was very difficult to exist. And I was then already 13. And 14, you know, and I said, Mama, you know, after school I could work a little bit, and this is what we did. Then after school I had part-time jobs and to make our income last, so we could, you know, continue living. And so life went on, and now I'm 18, and in the meantime I. Of course, finished high school at that time, and I'm 18, and a friend of Mama's, Tante Teresa, she said, Masha, do I have a wonderful Jewish boy from Germany that would be nice for Gertrude? That was my given name for Trudy to meet. And I said, Mama, I hear German. And she says, a very nice Jewish boy. So, okay, it was set up on a Sunday that Tante Teresa brought this young man over. And we lived in one room, Mama and I, we cooked in it, we lived in it. And then there was a small kind of closet that was like a separate room, but not big enough to be a room because you couldn't fit a bed or anything in it. And I changed clothes. I knew this young man was coming. So I come into the room, and you know, my dear students, there sits, I see this gorgeous young man. Oi, oi, oi. And we met, our eyes met. You all might have gone through this already, where there is an attraction, for. And so we met, and so we saw that Sunday. The next Sunday, we met in Tante Teresa's place. We didn't see each other. And then, so that was 2 weeks that we were apart, where we had this attraction. But that Monday, we met privately. And I don't need to talk about that. And 4 weeks later, my dear student, 4 weeks later, we were married. And we were married for 35 and a half years. And I'm now alone over 10 years. But this experience in my life has, as I told you about the dog, seeing the dog in the boots, that haunts you the rest of your life. And whatever I have done, it actually, whatever I do, it humbles me. I'm here, and I can experience this. And to be very grateful to be here. Every morning I wake up, well, maybe I have something else that I need to do in my life. This is how grateful I am to wake up every morning. And we, as I said, we were married then rather quickly and for a long time. And from Chicago, my husband got a transfer to California, to Pasadena, and this is where we settled. And we have lived there. I've lived there since that time. And then you feel like a Californian. You don't even think about all the other places you have lived, or whichever way you lived. And we have 2 sons, and one of them lives in Washington, and he's moving down to New Orleans in 2 weeks. And the other son lives 3 blocks from me. So can you imagine how fortunate I am to see him? And he's not married, sadly to say, but yeah. And I have been very busy. You see, at that time, when Mama sewed, she taught me how to do these buttonhole stitches, and I've always been interested in embroidery. And so about 30-some years ago, I became very depressed because everything caught up with me as to what I had lived through in my life. And I had to see a psychiatrist. And he said, you see, the most important thing that led me to become what I am today is that my doll that I cherished, that my father gave to me as a little girl, was torn away by a Nazi. And did you bring a picture or show a picture of it? Can we show that? Because that is... Yeah, could you show that? Because that is my... Oh, you have it. Oh, this is my goose that I did. I'll get to that. This is an important goose. Yes. Oh, this is another piece. Do you have a picture of the doll? No, that's... Yeah, didn't I tell you the Nazi tore my doll away from me? But there should be a photograph of me standing with a doll. No? No. No. Well, this is the... In the displacement camp, the Red Cross ladies came, and they gave the children a little box with pencils and erasers, and me in the box, and a little toy, and in mine were beads, tiny beads that you could use to embroider. And so I see them, and I looked at it, I said, Mama, look at this. I was so excited. That was the first beautiful thing that I had experienced seeing. And so Mama, she saw the first light in my eyes through the few years since my doll was torn away and everything. And she saw a sparkle in my eyes, and she says, we'll make something of this, with the beads. And she found in the displacement camp, she found a picture, because, listen to this. So, I'm excited. We'll make something of this. Could it be a goose, is my question. Where that came from, I don't know, because somehow, but she did find a picture of a goose, and then she copied the goose on parchment paper, and then transferred it. There was no fabric. This was still in 45. And she tore a piece of her skirt and tore a piece of it. And actually, it wasn't big enough. She had to sew it together to make it larger to fit for this pattern. And then she taught me how to insert and embroider with beads. And I did embroider this goose. And this goose has been with me all my life since that time. It's been in my living room all this time. And I didn't have enough beads. So she says, when we go to America, this is when we'll finish the goose. And of course, that's what happened. And so this goose is such a special thing in my life. And each time I look at it with pleasure, and I smile. And as we moved to California, and I've lived now in Pasadena. I went to Pasadena City College, and suddenly I became very deeply depressed. As I told you, I saw a psychiatrist. And he said, would you like to dress a doll like your doll was dressed? And, I thought, oh, this is great. We had 2 sons. I had no dolls. And I went and we bought a doll. And as I dressed the doll, because I did have my picture, and I put on the Mogen David, the Star of David, on the coat of the doll. And I thought, why did we have to wear the Star of David? And thereby was curious enough, and I did research on it, that we had, through several centuries, Jews, they had to wear different signs or different colored something to show that they were a Jew. And is something loosening up? No, it's okay. It's all okay. Somehow, it felt strange here. And yes, and just to think about it, that we had to wear something because we look like other people, and to identify that we have to show that we're Jews. That in itself is degradation to its utmost. And I'm sorry, I feel kind of lost and I love and appreciate you so much.
And we love you.
It's oh yes, yes. So
Maybe because of time, I brought you some water. Maybe because of time. we can-
I still have time, don't I?
Never, never.
Oh,
But if
we're
it's-
finished with our time?
Is there anything else you would
Well,
like to share with us?
I forgot exactly where I stopped, my angel.
So
I'm
how about-
84 years old, forgive me.
What would you like to share with us as a final?
Well, the final is never think of someone else being worth less than you are. This is where prejudice and hatred starts. That is the main theme in my life. And truly, I love everybody. And one, you probably think, well, how can you do this? But when you meet someone thinking they are just like you are, you converse, you talk about subjects. So, okay, what if you disagree? So you discuss things. It never needs to be hatred, and we must all watch out that we don't have this, that we can get along on this earth. We don't want these wars. Look what's happening all over again and again, and you'd think it was finished. Then Ukraine, Russia with Ukraine now. I'm not political, it's just in the news, right? And yeah, and so it's something that we should have learned, but this is all in your future's hands. You decide this, my dear students, what will happen on this earth and what America can still become, because we always have to become better, right? So that is my message. Thank you. Thank you.
You spoke beautifully. Thank you, Trudy. You did great.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And we have so many thoughtful, wonderful questions from
Yes.
the students.
Yes.
I know
Oh,
we're
great.
running short on time, but I can get all the questions to Trudy and make sure we get answers. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. This was 5 years ago, and a young girl, she wanted to meet a survivor, a Holocaust survivor. And the director of the Holocaust Museum in LA directed her, because she lives in Pasadena, and directed her to visit me. And so they came to visit me, and then she just, oh, that's yours, dear. And this is how this book started to be. The mother came along, and she said, we have to put this in a book, because they saw some of my work. So my dear students, I wish I could give them to you, but this is Stitched and Sewn, a life-saving art of Holocaust survivor Trudy Strobel by Jody Savin. And there's a lot of my work in here, how I got started embroidering. And listen, do you know, in hundreds of years, men were the embroiderers on this earth. The women were cooking and bearing children. And so that's only recent, the last 200 years, that now women do this embroidery. Yes, fine. But that's why I mention it, that men can do the same thing. I see so many young men here, and sometimes you feel left out. Listen, this is not a subject for me, but it is a subject for all of us, because through embroidery, you you learn to be patient, you create something pretty, and you feel rewarded. And, this is what we should feel in everything we do. But in embroidery, it really comes to fruition because you see it. You see it on the fabric that you have created. So this is my story, and lots of my work is shown in here. Thank you. Thank you.
Trudy,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Oh.
Rachel, thank you. The slides you send us, maybe we can just run the slides as I'm saying the thank you and as I'm showing our gratitude to, of course, to Trudy, who made our...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Trudy, just so you know, we ordered your books. So every classroom will get a copy of the book, and we'll have an extra copy in the library. So we will be able to read your story over and over again and again every single year because you made an impact on us and you stay with us in our hearts. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi Yoshi. Thank you, Cantor Emma, Rabbi Josh, Maestro. Thank you, sixth graders, and Adam from fifth grade, who told the personal story of your great-grandmother. You elevated our memorial service today.
Yeah.
Production, Tyler, Raz, Mark, we cannot do any of this without you. Thank you so very much. Parents, you took the time to come and be with us. And by your presence, you are telling our students that this matters, that Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial, matters, and we need to, our responsibility, our commitment is to remember and not to forget, and to be allies and advocates to others who go through similar situations. You should see how our students talk about the situation in Ukraine. Students, teachers, thank you. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have Trudy and Rachel walk to the entrance right here. So as you walk back to your classrooms, you can just face-to-face say Toda Rabba. So if we could just give...
Well, did I say thank you to all of you? Yes. I love all of you. I thank you so much to have been with you this morning. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, thank you, thank you. Oh, yes, yes, oh, yeah, I need that. Yeah, oh, good night.